structure that in the higher volumes, there'll be a significant drop, but there'll be a proportional increase to all bills that's there. So the typical increase that you'll see on a residential for 6,000 gallons is about $1.86 per month is what the increase will entail. So I'll ask any further questions based on the adjustment if needed.
Okay, before we go there, Attorney Phillips, you crafted the amendment to the original first reading ordinance. Any comments for the council?
The amendments were just to clear, so it's clear that the rate that's going to be increased in September, and there'll be a second rate increase on May 1st of 2017. And the changes were to try to implement the intent of the council after I consulted with Mr. Glendenning.
Questions in the council?
Mayor,
Alderperson Bradshaw.
thank you. The first proposed increase then would be at the 4.8%, minus the figures to come to the 3-point-something%. Is that correct, Director Glendenning?
Director Glendenning.
That'd be 4.8% is the current published rate for this year. So that's where it would stand for the increase for this year.
Follow up?
Alderperson Bradshaw.
Thank you. And Director Glendenning, then you propose that this change will also then be an additional increase as of May 1st, 2017. Is that correct?
That's correct. We will review the previous year's average change in the index, and it'll be applied on May 1st, 2017.
Not to exceed 5%.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yes. Alderman Keister.
Yeah, Mr. Glendenning, just for clarification, now once we get to the increase in May 1st of 2017, that will be an annual increase the 1st of May for every year thereafter, is that correct?
That's correct. Upon review of the city council and the publication of the index is when we will move forward with it each May 1st. It usually gets published hopefully no later than mid-March, and we'll know what that index is, so that'll give us a month to prepare prior to our fiscal year.
Mayor,
Alderman Chesney.
thank you. Director, what is the projected revenue going to be in the first year, the first increase of 4.8%?
In the entire year, it's looking like about $275,000 to be spread across both water and sewer.
Clarification, is that $275,000 for the 4.8 plus the 5% anticipated, or just the 4.8?
The 4.8 is all we're levying right now. The 5% is not to exceed in any particular year. So if it was published at 5.3, then we would go at 5, and that would be it.
Follow up.
Alderman Chesney.
So in a 1-year period, the way that this ordinance is structured, it would be
17 moving forward with a systematic increase every single year after that.
Follow up, Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
Okay, you're in calendar year, Director. I'm in 365-day year. So in 365 days, it could potentially go up just shy of 10%.
I think we're still within 1 year's period of time there. Just this very first year that would happen, but after May 1st, there it would only be one time per calendar year or fiscal year.
Mr. Mayor?
Alderman.
Cost them $1.55 a year. Example of 3 people that water a garden, it's going to cost them $1.72 per month, correct, per year? Okay,
Per month.
per month, right? And the one with 2 adults and 4 children is $2.08 a month. So it isn't as though this is a substantial amount of money to the end users of this. Naturally, it is a raise, but keep in mind it's not based on all the fees and everything else. It's based on the usage, correct?
Correct.
Mayor,
Alderman Ross.
so can you tell me how much each year will the water go up?
It's going to depend on the rate of inflation, Alderman Ross, because it's not a set rate. If there was no inflation, it wouldn't go up at all. if there is inflation in that industry index, then it would go up by that percentage, not to exceed 5%.
Mayor?
Mr. Glendenning.
Alderman Ross, if you remember that graph that I brought, showing the CPI index,
Yes.
the average over the last 10 years has been 5.3% for all 10 years if you combine them together. It fluctuates month to month as it goes, but then we would take the annual average, which just happens to be at this point in time 4.8. But after 10 to 20 years, it's never shown much of anything less than 5%
Okay, so the first year be 4.8.
for this calendar, for this particular year that we're playing catch up on, yes.
Okay, then the following year, do we have a,
Will be the published index that could be no greater than 5%. Whatever gets published in March is what we'll increase it by as of May 1st then that year.
okay,
And that is the average of the entire index for the previous calendar year.
for the previous calendar year? Okay.
Right, so 2016, they'll take it all and there'll be an average, and that'll be the index that will get applied based on water and sewer utilities.
Okay, and this is for the new, infrastructure?
No,
Director Glendenning.
two things. The base fee is going up by the 4.8, is applied to that area. Those are the things like insurance, wages, our prevailing wage that we pay to all of our service contractors that come in. Those are the base fees. Then the usage fee that gets that same index applied to it is per gallon, so that escalates as used. So that takes care of electricity, chemicals, metering pumps, things like that. They're directly associated with operations.
All right, so basically this is just for, like you said, operational?
Correct. This is not capital improvement at this point in
capital Or
time.
anything like that?
No. That's the 30 we've been discussing.
I mean, my main reason is because I unfortunately received more than one phone call, and it was about the water. I mean, there's a couple residents in the arcade. They says, okay, if my water bill goes up, is my pressure gonna go up? And I says, I don't know.
No.
I said, I can't give you an answer to that, but maybe I can better explain to them a little bit better now if they call me back about the reason being.
CPI is directly operations, operation and maintenance.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Alderman Miller.
Couple of questions. So, it doesn't seem like much to have, $2 a month right now. But my concern is, along with Alderman Ross, that doesn't have anything to do with the infrastructure problems that we have. And so 10 years down the line, we could be saying, that's a $20 raise per month if that stays in that track, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Second question is, what's it going to do to the average business, their water bills?
If you look and notice the base monthly rates, it's based on meter size. They're already in an escalating base rate based on how big their meter is. Part of that is a meter charge because, for instance, our 6-inch customers, the large industrial, they may use 3 million gallons a month. That's a very large meter. That meter alone is like $4,000 to replace. So a lot of our money gets tied up in just maintaining meters and doing preventative maintenance on that. But then additionally, the accelerated depreciation on utilities because of the higher usage and the more use. Now they do get a break with the digressive rate structure. Immediately, they're paying 17% less than a resident is for water the first day because they go over 900 cubic feet within the first day. So they're already paying 17% less for water than what you are as a resident.
So what does that say to that business that's using 3 million gallons a month? What's it's going to do to their bill alone?
It'll be just that 4.8% increase to their base and their usage rate.
Okay, so give me a rough estimate. What's it going to increase? You said it was $2 for.
Some of them here, like their base, let's just go to the highest one, the 6-inch meter. Typically, they would be paying a base rate of $109 per month for water. Their base rate will go to $114 per month. and the sanitary stays the same, but then their usage rate then goes from, we're getting down into hundreds of a cent per gallon, so it's hard to break that down. So, you know, 3 million gallon a day or month user could see a water bill and probably maybe up to $900 to $1,000 more per month.
More.
Correct.
Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
Thank you. Director, just to touch on what Alderperson Miller noted, so if we look at the historical trend at 5.3% is what the CPI index has gone up, and we've capped it at 5%. This will be a 50% increase in your water rates over a 10-year period.
Of the base rate, and they're correct, right, which is only a portion of our water rate, obviously, with the capital improvement and everything else, but yes.
Follow up, Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
And within the increase in the roughly $275,000 initial infusion of revenue, the residents of Freeport won't see anything other than this is simply just maintenance. So there will not be any construction tied to this increase, correct?
No, this won't be capital replacement as a depreciation, yes, as a depreciated item. This will be just general day-to-day maintenance, and I'm keeping what we have. If you recall, the one graph that I showed during that last 10-year period, we've been fighting about 42% inflation in the last 10 years. So reverting back to what you were saying, 10 years would be 50%. We would be even with the board and would probably be much better off if we would have raised in the last 10 years.
Mayor.
Alderman Chesney.
And if we were to go back to our constituents director and we were to talk about some efficiencies or economies that your department has made outside of the green energy capital improvements, how we've done our billing, you know, how we've coordinated everything, is there anything that we can point to that perhaps we've done better this year than in previous years as a takeaway in exchange for the increase?
Right now, the exchange for that would be obviously the planning of efficiencies. I mean, we're missing the mark of getting done what we really need to get done. Everything gets pushed until it becomes a capital item. So I'd have to say no, other than the proper planning of where we need to move is what we're doing for efficiencies.
Mr. Mayor?
Alderman Clem.
I can understand where there's little concern on what could happen here as far as with the increases and everything else. But one thing I'd like to do is caution the alderman and just say, you know, if we're not willing to put in 4.8% or 5% in a year, what are we going to do when it comes time to replacing all the structures and everything else? I think a simple thing might be to take a look at this and might help things off is to put a caveat, a clause, or whatever we want to put in there to review it every X amount of time and make sure we are on target and that it isn't getting out of control. I mean, that's a minor thing we could do, whether it could be yearly, every other year or something. You know, if there's a big feeling that it may get out of hand. You know, I sit there and think which Director Glendenning has talked about is how much money we've lost by not being able to do some of the maintenance that we have. And I think this is one of the things that will help with that maintenance. Also, I'd keep in mind that I'd say that this CPI was in until 2006 or so, 2000 something, and I believe the story that Mayor Gitz mentioned was correct, that it was dropped when the first one of the service fees were initiated, I think before the Big Four. But this was a reduction that was trying to help people out with before. Now we're just taking a look at it and reinstating it back in. And, you know, I wouldn't be opposed to a clause if we want to put a clause in to review it, talk about it. I think that's the fair thing to do.
Mayor?
Mr. Glendenning.
Just for one example, for the fact of inefficiencies, I did mention, I realize I've talked so many times that it all scatters together. But just the Big Four alone, the improvements with additional wells boosters, other things going on, our operations and maintenance cost increased $202,000 just for the additional capital equipment that was put in with the Big Four. Right away, I had to start cutting with other things that we already didn't have in order to try to maintain the new and let more of the old go. So right now, out of the potential $275,000 we see here, 3/4 of was ate up 2 years ago when I started all of the systems up for the Big Four, and we're not even fully operational with all of it yet.
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. A lot of what I've heard when speaking with colleagues is not, at least unless I'm totally reading it wrong, is not a question of whether or not we should peg. It's just a question of what's the layer of the cap. But as we discuss that, and I hope we can discuss that a little more as to, you know, what number do we use there. Two things I wanted to clear up. There's just a couple numbers that were thrown around, so I just want to clarify this first. Earlier, I think you said the 10-year average was 5.3%, and then later you said 42%, and I believe you said the last 10 years, but I think you meant the last 8 from what prior presentations. Is the 5.3% 10-year average accurate?
Yes, the inflation rate is accurate at 5.3. I used 42% over the last 8 to 9 years as just basically the difference between our expenses that we saw directly. I could add numerous things to that we didn't do that would probably equate to the 5.3.
Sure. And follow-up, Mayor?
Alderperson McClanathan.
Thank you. Just to talk a little bit more about what Alderman Chesney had asked there in regards to, you know, what is the benefits that, since we're obviously not talking about, you know, the $30 at this point, we're putting that, we're continuing that down the road, and we're talking about that and having the town hall meetings, et cetera. So we're not talking about the big replacement program, but when you're talking about this for operations and maintenance, you indicated that we've been deferring maintenance until it becomes a capital improvement. You said that previously a couple times that it costs us about 3 times as much waiting until it becomes a capital improvement versus regular maintenance. And so I guess the question would be, if there, you know, with the increase, with tying it and pegging it to CPI, are you going to see maintenance prolonging significantly, in some cases, the life of the assets that we have, therefore putting off that capital replacement portion of it, or is there more to it than that?
Absolutely. I mean, we're facing $158 million of actual replacement out there. It's all that remains. In addition to that, it's even more important now that we do the maintenance on that at the level that it should be. I could give you a list a mile long of how many hydrants, how many valves, things that need constant maintenance, and we leave it go. One of the biggest complaints is how our hydrants look out there. They're ratty, they're horrible. But before we can sandblast them, tear them apart and all that, you know, that alone is a huge expense in that. And I could give you tons of, for instances of what we left go that we'll be picking up on. A lot of it will have to do with a lot of our mechanical equipment also, our rolling equipment, and we are short-staffed in order to accomplish all this. So some of it's going to be ate up by additional staffing to get this all done.
Follow-up, Mayor?
Alderman McClanathan.
Thank you. As I've talked with some of the alderpersons here, as I said, there's generally been consensus in regards to let's peg it, but there's been a question in regards to where should we peg it at. I understand why you got the 5% cap, but if you're saying the 4.8 gets you about 275, if we were to put it at a 3% cap, I think that'd be around 225,000. And you know, if my not